on this week's FAS TV. We're in Kincardineshire, visiting Rodney Harrison, Farm Manager at Clarence Potato Growers and Farmers. Rodney talks us through how their seed storage and grading business has expanded over the years, and SAC Consultant Gavin Prentice gives us a rundown of crop quality, this year's planting, storage management, markets and technical advice for your potato enterprise.
We grow approximately 150 hectares of mainly seed, but a little bit of peeling ware as well. We also store and grade a further 2,500 tonnes of seed potatoes for local growers. Then at export time for Egypt, we take in another sort of 1,000 tonnes from another local farmer for bagging and packing. We bought this site 2019. This used to be Montrose Potatoes, which was a local cooperative of growers, of which indirectly we were members of. So kind of took this site over and moved out of our Longstanding site, which we still have, and it still stores potatoes, but we don't actually grade anything there. This is Sagitta. We grow this as a seed crop. This is destined for chipping crops down in the south. It's one of our main varieties. Grow sort of Maris Piper, the usual, Old Faithful. We grow a bit of Marfona, which again is home trade. A little bit of Lady Rosetta for Egypt. We don't do quite as much Egypt stuff now, just a bit unsure on what the future of that is, a bit higher risk. We grow Arsenal for Agrico, for, again, it's crisping. Mostly home trade stuff now on contract. A few new varieties this year. Ware varieties, it's Maris Piper for peeling and Saxon for peeling. We're actually a couple of weeks ahead of schedule with the weather. We plant the potatoes, so it usually takes 3 to 4 weeks. Then we actually have a quiet week or two till they start to come through. Then usually June time we start thinking about roguing the seed crops. That's to take out different varieties, any disease, virus that's there. Inspections take place during July, so that's the SAC come in and check them, make sure they're up to spec. Get through that. August is usually we start burning them down, which we go and take the tops off, give them a spray of chemical to kill them off. Harvest is September, October time. So they're all lifted into 1 tonne boxes like this, then put into the store. We've got a large drying wall in the store that we can sort of dry 500 tonne at a go. They tend to spend a couple of days on the drying wall, and then they're put into cold store or ambient store, variety dependent. Then usually mid-October the Egyptian market starts. So we start grading sort of Cara, Hermes, Lady Rosetta for that job. They're graded and stored into 50 kilo Hessian sacks, loaded into containers and away. That usually takes to sort of the end of November. Then we have a little bit of Morocco, which is December. Then into the new year, it's all home trade for stuff going down south. Sort of your varieties like your Sagitta and that for our English customers. That takes us through to sort of mid-April when it starts again, planting time. Behind me we've got the planter, which is a Grimmy GB330. So it has the capacity to do 3 in a bed planting if so wish, or the standard sort of 2 row. We use this because it gives us good production. On the front we've got a fertiliser hopper. That puts the fertiliser down into the bed. When we go down to the field, in the field there's a couple of destoners working. They basically sort the clods and the stones, leave a fine seed bed for us to plant the potatoes in. Before that there's usually a set of deep ridgers that'll come and open the beds up. Maybe before that, if it's weather like this or the field's a bit heavier, we'll put a cultivator through just to get some air into it. and then basically plant it and keep our fingers crossed that I've planted them the right way up. Obviously contracts every year, the last few years, it's been quite a buoyant trade. So contracts have gone up to a point where, yeah, there's a bit of profit in them. However, it doesn't need much. The weather changes, we're dry just now. If it doesn't rain all summer, irrigation becomes a big factor. Is there water? Yield struggle, quality struggles. Oh, it doesn't meet the spec. Rejections, and rejected potatoes don't tend to make much money. So costs, it doesn't take much to lose a lot of money. It's just the risks. With every year that passes, machinery goes up 10-15%. Labour's gone up 12% through our labour provider this year. Is our profits going to go up? Is our value of the crop going to go up to cover that? Who knows? It just gets to the point where it makes you think if it's worthwhile. This past year, Cara has been anywhere between £750 a tonne up to £1,000 a tonne. If it's got scab on it, it can't go to Egypt. It's basically stock feed in some cases, which is £30 a tonne. If it gets rejected, there might be a plant, if it's of a high enough grade to replant, it's maybe worth half that value. Again, that's been a good year. 2 or 3 years ago, Cara was only £350 a tonne. So it's got that. On home trade stuff, a box of this would be somewhere in the region of 600 quid, £600. If it's no use, it is stock feed. It's same with on the weigher side, a packing contract, it's maybe £300. If it's doesn't meet the script, processing £120 a tonne. So when the costs involved, you probably need high 200s to be profitable. If you start putting 10 acres of crop that goes wrong, you're not only losing multiple thousands of pounds. This site can store maximum about 7,000 tonnes, of which half of that is in cold store. We put a new grading system in 2020, the COVID year. That was troublesome, but it's working as it should do now. The cold storage is sort of 3,500 tonnes. There is a drying wall that does about 500 tonnes in one go. But once we get into the export season, we need space to set loads of potatoes down. Loads, 20 pallets. So we can bag up sort of 5 loads a day. You're at 100 pallets, 120 pallets. A lot of floor space. So again, electric costs fluctuate. You think you've got it, okay, that's tied in for a year, and then next year it's doubled. And it's quite hard to plan. We're now starting to think for next year. Just, okay, what are we planting? What seed crops will we plant or retain for next year's planting? What's the market likely to do this year? Should we be looking at something different? And machinery-wise, things are starting to get old. The destoners are 10 years old. They're probably due to be replaced, but everything costs. Is the budget there to replace the machinery? The harvester, again, it's 10 years old, but a new state-of-the-art 4-row harvester, it's touching £1 million by the time you add everything onto it. It makes you think. When we bought this site over in 2019, that's when we started to store and grade other people's crops. So we get paid regardless for that without the risk. The facilities are here. We used to grow a lot of packing potatoes for Albert Bartlett. Just the way things worked out, we moved away from that, concentrated a bit more on the seed. We went through 2 or 3 years of growing a lot of Egyptian export, and then have kind of shied away from it again. The risks involved in that are, it's short-term gain, but I think long-term it might have an issue. We're trying to look long-term, get relationships with seed houses, so that in 10 years' time we're still here, and we've taken a bit of the risk out of the whole job. Harvest was fairly straightforward this past year. It was dry, things come in decent nick. A little bit of dry rot appeared in store over the course of the season, which again, warm, dry lifting season compared to last year. Well, we actually only finished harvest on the 21st of April last year. So we're definitely a bit further in front. So, but on the whole, stocks have kept well. There's not much issues at all. As a farmer, we kind of know that you can't control the weather, so you don't worry too much about that. Market, that's the main one. Things change so quick. I mean, last year, seed prices were jumping 50, £100 a week. At the start of last year, it was uncontrollable. So trying to plan when it's as variable as that makes a bit of thought. Land, trying to get good quality land at a affordable price, because it definitely seems to have, it's gone through the roof this year, the potato land prices. And then probably machinery, buying machinery. The cost of it, it's all across the board, not just the potato industry, the whole farming industry. The balance doesn't seem to be there just now. Basically, to grow seed, you need a SASA test, a statutory test, to make sure that the ground is PCN free. PCN's sort of a nematode that does a bit of damage. I'm not a scientist, so I'll not go too much into that. But if the land's not clear, you can't grow seed. So it's becoming a bigger problem. Round this area, there's isolated pockets. Every year there's maybe a field, someone has a field. So, but that's pushing growers out of other areas more into our area, which they're looking for the land as well. So a bit of competition. But if we don't start to think a bit more seriously about it, eventually it'll come that all the land's infested, and the seed industry will struggle. We'll end up planting where we probably shouldn't be planting. If I had any advice for someone that wants to get involved in this industry, is to plan, think. You might hear, oh, potatoes are flying this year, but next year they could be worth nothing. We've all seen it, boom, bust, and bust again usually, and it does. The investment needed is fairly hefty. The returns are there just now, and we need to, as an industry, we need to ensure that the returns are there every year, and that's by planning. And that's all stages of the chain, from the pre-basic growers right the way through to the rare grower, that knowing what we need planted and plant what is required. Not just plant, oh, we've got that extra field this year, we'll just plant it and hope for the best. That does no one any good. So I think that would be the big take, that actually have a plan and stick to it. We're getting perfect conditions just now for planting. Nationwide are 2 or 3 weeks in front. Potential, there'll be an oversupply this year. But the way the weather tends to work in the UK, who knows where we're going to end up.
Rodney and Gavin have a long-standing relationship, spanning around 15 years. Throughout this time, Gavin has seen Rodney's business grow, and they continue to work together through Gavin's new role at SAC.
My role primarily is to service and give advice to the SAC members, and SAC stands for the SAC Association of Potato Producers, and we advise members, or part of our network is growers, it's corporate clients, ag chem companies, distributors, and primarily what I try to do is applied agronomy. It's also trialled work and grower group facilitation and meetings for regional parts. I've been working in tatties for about 15 years now. I started off as a fields person with IPM and very much looking at stock quality and control. Since then I worked with major seed breeders and suppliers in the supply chain, to which I performed many different roles, including logistics, sales, technical, trials and more. So through that time as well I've seen the development of lots of new different varieties, some that have better agronomic characteristics than the traditional ones in the marketplace. So it's quite exciting to see that progress being made as well in the industry. I've known Rodney now for best part of most of my career, I guess, and we've worked together in seed supply and contracts as well. And today we're here out in the field seeing Rodney plant his 2025 crop. We're having an exceptional spring. It's been extremely dry and potato planting is about 7 to 14 days ahead of schedule at this point in time, depending on location, soil type, variety and different things too. But today the conditions are optimal. We're creating a nice fine seed bed and soil temperature has increased. It was quite cold or cool earlier on. We had quite cold overnight temperatures which just dragged that soil temperature down, and our magic number is 7 degrees, so we want to try to make sure that we're planting into soils that are 7 degrees or above. And we always want to make sure that the seed that are coming out of store going into the ground is cooler than the temperature of the soil as well. But at this point in time we're well ahead of schedule in Scotland, and we should have a good structure there for root growth and plant development going forward. Crop quality and storage quality in general is pretty good. We have had some issues this season with latent infection of some problems. So for example, last year we had quite a warm, dry lift, which essentially caused lots of damage on the tubers, and damage points is a point of entry for other pathogens, fungal or bacterial. So this year we've found in stores that there is a bit of dry rot and gangrene around, more so than normal, and that is being found across the country. The ware market and the potato market in general has gone a little bit flat. In the ware market, up to the lead up to Easter, there was quite good demand, and contract ware especially was moving quite well, but in general the free buy market is struggling. In terms of, there's probably a bit of an oversupply this year and prices have crashed a little bit because of that. So in terms of the seed market this season, it's been very topsy-turvy. We had what we thought was going to be a good year at the start of the season, but since then a general potential oversupply or in line with demand has meant that seed supply has curtailed over the last few months. So it's meant that there could be a little bit of surplus on farms. Early prior to this though, pre-Christmas, export market was very buoyant and prices were extremely high, probably the highest they've been for a long time, primarily to the Egyptian market. But any home trade varieties that were sold at that time also moved off farm very well. It's only now that things have changed, and that could be down to a combination of other factors also. There has been an increase in tuber index virus testing of farm saved seed. So growers that are planting for ware have decided to tuber index test for virus, and if it's at an acceptable level, they then may decide to replant that stock rather than buying in new fresh seed. In terms of late season storage, we want to try to basically look at lots of different aspects. So we want to check the temperature and keep monitoring the temperature within store, especially at this time of year when the outdoor temperature starts to increase. It's a lot harder for the indoor temperature to stay consistent. So fridges will be running a little bit harder, working that little bit longer to keep the potatoes cool, optimally around 3 to 4 degrees, depending. And what growers would need to do is essentially continue to monitor stocks for any sort of defects or developments of skin blemish, So skin spot, for example, comes in quite late, and other different bits and pieces. So it's a case of regularly checking on the stocks in store, check your temperatures, check the airflow and the ventilation. We want to continue to ventilate at this point in time. Seed growers especially are having to open and close the doors and frequently come in and out of store to bring seed out to warm to grade for packing, but also to get planting material out of store to go to the field. So the doors are opening a lot, and the warm air from internals in the grading shed mixing with the cold air in the cold store gives convection, and we get condensation. And condensation is a problem with potatoes because skin blemish diseases like silver scurf and black dot thrive in warm, damp, humid conditions. So that may be a concern for marketability going forward. Earlier on, when some growers were starting to plant, it was typically middle of March and temperatures were cool. So I think from that point in time, Rhizoctonia could be a risk to some stocks that have been left in the ground that little bit longer in the cool temperatures. So certainly soil temperature is something to consider. Now as we progress through into April, the soil temperature has gotten much warmer. We should be out that danger zone now, but we still are having cool nights. So it's a case of just be mindful of that. And also the temperature of the tubers coming out of store to make sure that they are slightly warmed as well. In terms of planting, to get off to a good start, you would want your tubers to be slightly chitted, so just to have the eyes open. Not too much so that you de-sprout the seed, but just a little enough to give it that extra oomph to come through the ground, because what we want is rapid emergence and early emergence as best we can, and even as well across the crop. That makes it better for plant development and also for the target market at the end. In terms of setup of machinery, it should all be ready, serviced, good to go before this point in time. Nobody wants to be caught out, and also be mindful of your field planning as well to make sure that you have the right stocks for the right fields, because again, field selection plays its part in varieties because some are more susceptible to other things. In terms of grading, perhaps making sure that the seed is warm coming out of cold store. So again, around about 8 to 10 degrees. Tubers should then be less prone to damage as they go across the grading line. You want to make sure to remove all faults depending on your spec for the market. So for example, if it's for seed, there'll be phytosanitary requirements depending on whether it's for home trade or export. So you want to meet those targets by removing and identifying problem tubers from the line so that they don't go in the bag. And in terms of physically, once it's graded and into the bags, it's about keeping those bags in a place where they've still got some circulation of air around them. We don't want the bags to start to sweat, so ideally keeping them in a ventilated space is best, although space is always at a premium at this time of year, so it's difficult to do that. But certainly it might also be a case that some may have to go into the cold store if it's for a later order for delivery. We, as part of SRUC and SAC, have been involved with an initiative called PCN Action Scotland, and it was basically a way of looking at the market and identifying a threat, which is PCN, which is potato cyst nematode. We have two types of PCN. We have Rostockiensis and Pallida. Pallida is the one that is causing us most problems locally in this area and also in Angus, and it's something that SASA, our certification body, had identified that we needed to change, otherwise we might not have a seed market going forward or seed production in Scotland. So the initiative brought together lots of different parties, lots of interested parties, and they looked at different approaches to try to reduce PCN. And one of the main methods or best methods that they found was varieties with resistance and tolerance. So out of that, a number of varieties were trialled and were found to be positive. So you have a ratio of eggs per gram pre-variety that's been tested, and then post-variety once harvested out the field. And all the varieties that were tested had difference in terms of how much it reduced the eggs per gram in the soil, but one or two did particularly well. And on the back of that, the variety Elland, for example, has gained traction with the market and is now on all the major packing lists. So it means now within Scotland we have a tool in the toolbox to target and reduce Pallida, especially PCN, not Bristocchiensis. Unfortunately, it doesn't have Bristocchiensis resistance, but it has Pallida, so it is a solution to one of our problems. So obviously we're standing in the field today in April, but by the time viewers will be watching this, it will be during summer, so certainly by that point the Jersey Royals will be on the shelves, so it's always good to have some new crop coming in, probably in May time, for some fleeced material wear down in Cornwall as well. In terms of timing for seed growers, it will be getting close to inspection time, so first inspections will be starting to take place. We'll know at that stage what sort of levels of virus inoculum that are in fields. We'll start to know what numbers of aphids are around the vectors that spread the virus. We'll also have an indication as to what blight pressure may or may not be there. So 3 top tips to look out for going forward this season. First of all, it's quite topical given where we are, is know your seed source, so your field generation, the health, timings of the previous crop as well, perhaps planting date, harvest date, and that will give you a good indication as to what to expect going forward and to plan accordingly. Another tip would be to look at your blight programs this year. So we now have fungicide sensitivity and some aggressive blight strains out there. We also are about to lose Mancozeb, which is our only resistant multi-site fungicide. So it's going to be more difficult and challenging to build a blight program for the duration of the crop this year. And lastly, to maintain good storage management practices. So good hygiene, make sure accurate temperatures, recording, doors opening, etc. to continue on through to the end of the crop.